What is summarized in chapter 2? The complete wisdom that leads to Brahma Nirvana. Towards the end of the chapter, in the last verse, we saw Brahma Nirvana Mrichati. That is true identification, attainment of true identification and attainment of true happiness. Isha Brahmi Sthiti Partha Nainam Prapya Vimuhyati Sthitva Syamanta Kalepi Brahma Nirvana Mrichati. And how is this wisdom obtained? Is sequenced out in a spiritual path. So basically, we just sat down and we took out the path that has been sequenced out. And this is the spiritual path that our scriptures recommend that we sadhakas or the seekers, we should follow. And we are encouraged to follow. We would notice that if you look at this path, and I had sent it to you in advance so that you can take a look at it before the satsang, all the points, all the stages that are covered, in fact, the entire path itself, every piece of it is actually touched upon in chapter 2. And Bhagavan covers each of those. And it would be interesting exercise for us to sit down and identify which verse pertains to which concept. So let's go through the spiritual path. And I like to call it the sweet design of cosmic order. It is the cosmic order, and it's a beautiful design. And if we undertake our journey along what has been designed, our life will be very fruitful. We have said this a multiple times, a number of times. It all starts with Karma Yoga. Essentially begins with Karma Yoga. And what is Karma Yoga? Karma Yoga is nothing but performing action, doing the karma with the right attitude. And the right attitude is doing whatever we do with Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, dedicating it to the Lord, dedicating it to the higher ideal, and receiving whatever comes our way as Prasada Buddhi, as His benevolence, and as the result of who we dedicated our action to. Whoever that we dedicated the action to, whatever we dedicated the action to, that is giving us the result. This attitude converts our karma to Karma Yoga. Now, action everybody does. We will see later in chapter 3 that actually people are helpless in doing action. Action everybody does. But how can we act intelligently? What is this term, intelligent action? Intelligent action is something whereby when we are acting, the performance in terms of our action, that becomes excellent. And when it becomes excellent, that excellent performances, one after the other, they bring about an unseen benefit. And that benefit is something that gives us that inner purity. Like the polishing of the wall, the story that I gave about the painter and the other spiritual guru, to polish the wall to reflect the painter's painting. So this unseen benefit is polishing and purifying of our mind-intellect instrument. And with this purified mind-intellect instrument, we are able to proceed along the path. This is essentially the art of action or art of living, is called Karma Yoga. And Karma Yoga leads to dexterity in action, which is Karmasu Kaushalam. And then the next step, the second step is Chitta Shuddhi. Chitta Shuddhi means removal of impurities that are there in the mind intellect. We saw that there are two types of impurities. Type 1 of impurities is impurities that makes us feel disturbed by what is happening in our environment. Our response or our reaction to what happens to us, or what is perpetuated to us from whatever is outside of us in the object world. The type 2 impurities are the impurities that are within us, that are essentially sullying our mind-intellect instrument, and because of that, we perpetuate outside that same impurity to the object world, to our environment. And we saw that the primary way these are made, the composition of the second type of impurities, are essentially the Shadripu or the imperfections of the mind. And these were Kama or desire, Krodha or anger, Lobha or greed, Moha or delusion, Madha or pride, and Matsarya or jealousy. We have gone through all this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on all of these. Chitta Shuddhi then leads to Samatvam or equipoise. Remember, we discussed the litmus test. The litmus test, the definite indicator to us that we have attained Chitta Shuddhi is equipoise. When you see a person who is constantly maintains equanimity, you can say that that person has attained Chitta Shuddhi. Not the tamas, confusion with tamas equanimity. A person who is involved with the world, not tamasic and not involved, but while being involved maintains equanimity, goes through the extremities and maintains equanimity. That kind of a person, detached, involved person. The third step is Chatushtaya. Sadhana Chatushtaya is fourfold practice. And what is it? We saw that the first one was Viveka, which is nothing but discriminating between the Nitya and the Anitya, the permanent and the ephemeral. The second is Vairagya, which is dispassion towards the impermanent, what is not there forever. The third is Sham Adi Shatka Sampatti. Sham and some other elements, which are totally 6. And those are Shama, which is control of the mind, Dhamma, which is control of the senses, Uparama, which is willingness to give up distractions that will keep coming even if there is control of the mind and senses. We saw that earlier in chapter 2. Even for the controlled mind, the mind is going to run away. And how do you control that? That is Uparama, the willingness to give up distractions. Titiksha or forbearance. Even if you control your mind, senses and give up distraction, things will happen. And how are we able to bear it? The fortitude or forbearance, the patience, the endurance. Shraddha, which is dedication and faith, and Samadhana, which is ability to focus. And the fourth of the Sadhana Chatushtaya is Mumukshutva, which is desiring only for the ultimate true happiness. Desire only for liberation. Desire only for Tattva Jnana. That is Mumukshutva. And Sadhana Chatushtaya leads to one being an adhikari or one being qualified. It is like when you have an MBBS degree, you are allowed to practice as a doctor. So that qualification comes from Sadhana Chatushtaya. The next step is Guru Upasadana. Guru Upasadana is nothing but reaching the Guru and seeking direction, like Arjuna did. Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. He asks Bhagavan. That is Guru Upasadana. So once, I was sitting in this lecture and Javed Akhtar was there and he said, this is quote unquote, Javed Akhtar quoted, he said, any belief that is devoid of logic, reason, rationale, evidence or witness, that is faith. And I was sitting there and wondering, what is he talking? Then there won't be any faith in anyone, any belief in anyone. And if you are going to be without faith or without belief, where is Guru Upasadana? Then as I kept thinking while I came back home, I kind of twisted it was his quote, I just rearranged the words. And that made a lot more sense to me. And that went something like, any belief where logic, reason, rationale, evidence, witness are inherently present, that is faith. So this makes a lot more sense, especially when one is in this spiritual pursuit, because spiritual pursuit requires a lot of faith. Guru Upasadana then leads to Shravana, which is listening and receiving, importing information, and Manana, which is asking questions, seeking clarity, debating, and so on. Even arguing is Manana. Our scriptures give the authority to students to argue with the Guru when you don't agree with something. And the next step is Nididhyasana. Nididhyasana is meditation or contemplation. And the clarity that emerges from Nididhyasana helps a person to focus and to immerse. Focus is concentrating the mind to a single point, Chitta Ekagratha. And immersion is nothing but sannyasa. Without that immersion, perfection cannot be attained. Oftentimes we think sannyasa is something, which is totally giving up on everything, renunciation. That is not entirely true. But immersing in something so that you are able to get that perfection, immersing in the subject matter, That is essentially sannyasa. A person who immerses completely is a sannyasi. That gives the person complete focus, complete dedication, ekagrata. And nididhyasana then leads to clarity of thought, which is nothing but samabuddhi. The next step is vividisha sannyasa. Vividisha sannyasa means immersion to know. Vividisha means the desire to know. Vetum ichha iti vividisha. The desire to know is vividisha. And sannyasa, like we have seen earlier, means also implies to give up. So when one has the focus, when one has the immersion, and one has the desire to know, desire to get that knowledge, when all these three are present, what happens? Then one gives up the distractions that come. So if I want to be a really good tennis player, I will practice a lot. And when I'm practicing, I'm going in the morning at 6 a.m., I'm giving up on my sleep. If I go again in the evening, I give up on my recreation. So when you give up distractions to immerse deeply, to focus even more, that is called vividisha sannyasa. Even I experienced this, when I was, one of the things that I used to do other than my work, pretty much addicted to either tablet gaming or watching a lot of these quote unquote Netflix or Amazon Prime and all of those things. Reasonable, I was not too addicted, but quite a bit, yes. But what I found was that now that I have to sit down, I have to start writing my notes, and I love it. And because of that, those things have taken a backseat. I wouldn't say that I don't play a tablet game at all, but it has gone down like probably 90%. So when you love something and when you immerse yourself in an activity that you love, that gives you that intellectual satisfaction, then you give up something else which you would have otherwise been indulging in. And that giving up, that renunciation, that leaving the lower to attain the higher, as per your definition of what is lower and higher. Oftentimes we start thinking and debating within ourselves about what is lower and what is higher. If you are pursuing, if you are a sadhaka, you define for yourself what is lower and what is higher. And as per that, when you give up something lower to attain something which is higher, that renunciation is called sannyasa. And this renunciation then enables the person to have total, complete, non-stop, dedicated pursuit. I will repeat this again. Total, complete, non-stop, dedicated pursuit. And any excellent performance requires these elements, requires this kind of a pursuit. Vividisha sannyasa leads to avidya nivritti. Avidya means ignorance, nivritti means removal of ignorance, and vidyananda prapti, gaining of wisdom. The next step is tattva jnana, is nothing but realization of the truth. When you realize the truth, what happens? The seeking stage comes to an end and the searching stage starts. So you are no longer that sadhaka. A person who has got tattva jnana is no longer the seeker or no longer the sadhaka, because that person already possesses that knowledge. If I lose my car key, I already possess my car and my car key. So I have to search for it. So when a person gets to a stage where you have tattva jnana, the seeking stops and the searching begins. And with this realization of that truth, with this knowledge or with the wisdom, automatically comes a sense of humility. You will find that the greatest cricket player, Virat Kohli, is not arrogant about his game. He may be arrogant about the competition. There may be a physical show while he's playing, because like war, competitive sports requires aggression. But normally if you see him, he's a soft guy. So that humility comes in automatically. Real knowledge leads to the realization that we are very small. We are a tiny speck in this amazing, awesome, mammoth creation. We are nothing. One of my experiences, whenever I travel to the Himalayas, I'm doing these treks. When I'm saying Himalayas, I don't mean Shimla. When you go beyond, when you go deep into the Himalayas and that you have the mountain, in front of you, massive. And then you are like, you feel that you are such a small element in this creation. If you are in an empty beach and you see that vast ocean in front of you, massive water, you feel like you're such a small speck in that creation. And Tattva Jnana then leads to bhakti, or absolute devotion. Once there was a young boy who saw his mother was working. And what was she working on? With a cloth, a thread and a needle. And he asked her, what was she doing? What are you doing, Amma? And she said she was making an embroidery. The boy didn't understand what an embroidery is. So he says, what is this? He asked her what that was. And she said, let me embroider it for you, pun intended. Because embroider means elaborating, giving information or knowledge. So in this context that we are talking, embroider, So she said, I am creating this beautiful design in this nice cloth with these colorful threads. And the boy is looking at her, and he sees this cloth, which is, securely bound by this wooden ring. If you see these embroidery works, in the handiwork they do, it's firmly secure, like we are secure in this creation. And it is securely bound there. But all he is able to see is a jumble of colors, a jumble of threads, which is pretty chaotic, which is pretty, it's like a mess. And he tells his mother, Amma, what are you talking? Are you saying this is a beautiful design? All I see is a mess out there. And then the mother turns the cloth and the boy sees this intricate, beautiful, lovely, flowery design, which is a systematic pattern, which is made with a systematic pattern. So oftentimes when we look from things from our narrow perspective, then what happens is we see everything as a problem. We see everything as a complicated mess. But when we extract ourselves from our narrow perspective and when we see it in the light of common knowledge, in the light of the bigger knowledge, ultimately, of course, Tattva Jnana, but till we get to Tattva Jnana in the light of the bigger knowledge. When we get there, then things make a lot of sense. We see a beautiful, wonderfully created pattern which makes logical sense, which makes emotional sense in the bigger picture of life. So Tattva Jnana then leads to Samadhi. Samadhi is what? Samadhi is immersion in that knowledge, immersion in that wisdom, and in that devotion. We find this in the life history of every sannyasi. Whether you see a successful, excelling sportsman, a musician, an artist, a literary writer, a poet, whichever field you look at it, scientific explorations, people who are indulging in scientific explorations, all of these, you can see, that there is this immersion to the exclusion of other activities. In fact, people who explore space are astronauts who go out there and spend 6 months, 1 year and beyond. They have actually left the earth and they've gone there completely to the exclusion of it. That is their level of interest. In fact, a lot of people will find very scared to go to space. Forget about going to space. People feel scared to do skydiving from the airplane. When you go to the airplane and when you're thinking and people tell you, can you skydive? It's something that takes just freedom. I wouldn't call it courage. It just takes freedom to take that plunge, to take that jump. Imagine going to space. When you are going to space, you're so passionate about what you're doing that you're willing to leave this planet Earth, which is where you spent all your life up till now. So leaving it to the exclusion of what you would otherwise be doing, you immerse yourself. And that absolute focus, that absolute concentration, dedication, those are nothing but a byproduct of love. This samadhi then leads to Atma Tripti, which means self-delight. Tripti is delight. Atma Rathi. Rathi is satisfaction, self-satisfaction, finding satisfaction within yourself. And Atma Santushti, self-contentment. Actually, some of these times when you're doing this, you start thinking of the verse itself. So it's a beautiful exercise to connect the verse. So Atman Yevatmana Tushtaha. Finding that satisfaction within yourself. That then leads to Aparoksha Jnana. The next step is Aparoksha Jnana. Aparoksha Jnana is direct experienced wisdom. Paroksha is hearsay or something that we have read about, information that we have got from other sources. Aparoksha is what we have experienced ourselves. My eyes, my sense organs, my wisdom, my mind and intellect, what I experience through these faculties which are mine. Remember, I'm saying I and mine. That is Aparoksha Jnana or direct experienced wisdom. One of these examples that I keep giving is the tennis games, and I love watching these rallies when Federer and Nadal are, it's like playing these rallies. It's like a music concert, up and down, beautiful shots. Each one of them is something to be relished. And sometimes it goes on for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And both players are completely immersed in it, completely 100% immersed. And then one of them wins the point, they come out, the next one starts. There's no break, there's no nothing, there's no distraction. The next point starts. The next point could be a longer point than the first one. Remember why I take this example of Federer and Nadal is they are experts in their game. They have the complete knowledge. In this world of tennis, there's nobody else who is them. So they are the epitome of knowledge in tennis. When a person who has reached that epitome of knowledge in tennis already got it, so will the person get bored because he already has got it or she already has got it? Not really in these kind of examples, right? In fact, in these kind of examples, the more better you become, the more epitome you reach, you get deeper and immerse deeper into it. So that kind of getting absorbed in your own wisdom and getting thoughtless. When these two guys are playing, they are not thinking of anything else, completely thoughtless. In that experience, that is getting deeper and deeper into samadhi, which is nothing but this aparoksha jnana leads to nirvedam or dispassion, wherein when you lose a point, it doesn't matter. When you win a point, it doesn't matter. And it leads to samadhi abhyasa, which is the next step. The 10th step of the spiritual path is samadhi abhyasa. Deeper meditation, deeper contemplation. One of my other favorites, Viktor Frankl, who was a survivor in the Germany concentration camp, he said, meditation is about a survivor in a concentration camp. The kind of things that were done to him, he could have just died. People who got lesser tortured have died. But he survived. You know why he survived? In his own words, because he was able to delineate, detach himself from the body, mind, and intellect. The pain was being meted out to his body, mind, and intellect, essentially to his body, but he detached himself from it. And that then enabled him to think about and say that meditation is about accepting the challenge to change ourselves and transforming our habits of interpretation. By learning to understand and focus on what is real and go beyond our conditioned view of reality and experience the subtler truths of our existence. In this process, we become more connected to what really is. What a beautiful quotation. Any remaining impurity, any remaining kama, krodha, lobha, mada, matsarya, any of those that are remaining, they are completely removed. While doing karma yoga, a lot of this gets removed, but some may remain. And even if those are remain in samadhi abhyasa, it is completely eradicated. And samadhi abhyasa then leads to ashubha vasana nivriti, which means removal of negative tendencies, and shubha vasana prapti, which is gaining of positive tendencies. The next step then is vidvat sannyasa. We talked about vividisha sannyasa. This is vidvat sannyasa. Vidvat is a person who already knows, means a knower. The renunciation of the knower is vidvat sannyasa. Immersion after knowing. Sannyasa is focus, letting go, absorption. One of my favorite examples is Sri Ramana Maharishi, a Mahatma. He had this aparoksha jnana, direct experience of the Brahman. And oftentimes when he was either teaching or giving lectures, he used to relapse into his direct experience, the memory of that direct experience. And his mind will go deep into what he has experienced himself. And in those states, he suddenly disconnects with the audience. And either the words stop coming out, he becomes completely silent, or sometimes he's saying something which is not understood by the people who are there. May be connected, may not be connected, but definitely not understood. And then he comes back after a few minutes and then continues as if nothing had happened. That kind of immersion, that is Brahmanubhuti, Anubhuti of the Brahman that you have experienced. And when that Brahmanubhuti happens, then what happens is it leads to Vasana Nivritti, or complete purgation of the tendencies. The next step is Jivan Mukti, which is liberation while living. And that Jivan Mukti, while you are living, if you are liberated, what does it mean? That means that you are connected to the inner divinity. Like we had talked about in one of the first initial sessions, every creation is divine in the inside. Deep inside, there is divinity. Deep inside, there is happiness. So we don't have to go out seeking happiness outside. We have to search inside and find it. That inner exploration, that is what is the finding the self, discovering the self. And that Jivan Mukta, he has or she has attained Paramah Purushartha, which is the original goal or the ultimate goal of all human beings, attaining that deep happiness that touches the core and everlasting, long-lasting happiness that can remain forever. Whatever actions we do for that, to become happy. And that Jivan Mukta has got it, has attained it. The Jivan Mukta is described in various ways by our scriptures. One of them is Sthita Prajna. We talked a lot about the Sthita Prajna in chapter 2, a person of steady wisdom. The other person Jivan Mukta is referred to as Bhagavad Bhakta, devotee of the Supreme Lord. We'll come to that, chapter 12 onwards. Then also referred to as Guna Atita, which means someone who is beyond the three gunas, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigunya Bhavardhana. Someone who is Nistraigunya, that person, beyond the three gunas. And also referred to as Brahmana. We talked about it earlier. One who has realized the self. In fact, in some context, even the seeker is also referred to as Brahman. The next step is Brahma Nirvana or Yogam, which Bhagavan talks about in chapter 2 also. True identification, realization. This person is in this state of ultimate, pure, long-lasting, deep happiness as long as the body remains. And once the body perishes, the person attains Videha Mukti. Videha Mukti means is liberated from procuring another body. This may be difficult for some of us to understand, some of us to believe or agree with. In which case we can stop at Jivan Mukti, which of course we all relate to because all of us are pursuing that ultimate happiness. But if we believe and if we understand the concept of continued life, then Videha Mukti is the ultimate state, the end of this pursuit of the spiritual path. The culmination of the spiritual path is Videha Mukti.